Welcome to today's 5-minute Bible study in the book of James. We're still in James chapter 1. Today we're looking again at verses 14 and 15. Now we looked at this paragraph yesterday in which James talks about temptation. And of course James reminded us very strongly that when we are tempted, we must never say that God is tempting us, because God does no evil. He has no evil. God is all holy. And he is not tempted to sin, of course, and he never tempts his children. So temptation does not come from God, and we must never say it does. But then the question arises, then where does temptation originate? Where do these temptations come from? And James talks about that in verses 14 and 15. He says the temptation comes from within ourselves, from evil desires. Okay, let's read carefully what James says. Each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desires and enticed. Then after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death. Now he talks about the progression from a desire that is evil, that entices us, and that when that it is submitted to it, in other words, if we submit to that evil desire that has lured us, it gives birth to sin. And once sin is in our life, as it grows, it leads to destruction. That is, it leads to death. And so we see this progression from evil desire to sin to eternal death. You see, sin always brings death. And if it's not corrected, our soul begins to die. And without the salvation of God, the result will be eternal death. So, the origin of sin is in desires that are evil. Desires that are for wrong things. Now, when we say that, we must also hasten to say that desire in and of itself is not wrong. Just to desire something or to yearn for something can be a very good thing. As a matter of fact, God created us with holy desires. It's when those desires become evil or distorted or twisted in some way that they become evil. Let me give you an example. God gives us a desire for food, hunger. Now, hunger is a very good thing. We need food to nourish our bodies. We need to replenish our energy by eating properly. And so hunger, the desire for food, is a good and a holy thing given to us by God. But if the desire for food, hunger, becomes twisted or distorted from its original purpose, it can become sinful. In other words, we can desire an excessive amount of food or the wrong sorts of food. In other words, the good and holy desire of hunger can become twisted until it's gluttony. And we know that gluttony is one of the sins that can lead to destruction. It is good to have hunger. That's a good desire. But if it becomes gluttony, it's leading us to sin. You see how the desire, as it was originally given, is holy. But if it becomes evil, twisted, or distorted to wrong ends, it becomes sinful. That's the evil kind of desires James is talking about. Another example, the desire for things in your life is a holy desire. In other words, if you desire a nice place to live, a place of security, a home, or a nice apartment to live in, there's nothing wrong with that desire. But if you desire someone else's home or someone else's apartment, that is covetousness. And so then you see a desire has become twisted into something that is wrong. Desires become evil when they're twisted from their original intent and distorted for ways and means that are not appropriate. So James says, when the desires within us become twisted in that way, they can lead to evil. And if we give into the evil part of them, they can lead to sin. And that sin, when it is full grown, leads to death. So we must guard our desires and watch over our desires and make sure they are holy and true as God intended them, and not allow them to become twisted out of shape. We need to guard our soul and guard the things we long for or desire and make sure they stay holy, because if they lead to evil places, to sin, it can lead to destruction. That's what James is concerned about. And so he reminds us, don't let your desires become evil. Don't let them become distorted. Nurture them as the holy things God originally intended them to be. And then you will not be led to sin, and you'll not be led to death. Hope you join us tomorrow as we continue our 5-minute Bible study in the book of James.